I'm 71 years old, and I need to tell you something that's going to shatter your entire understanding of therapy. For 40 years, I sat in a chair and helped people heal from depression, anxiety, trauma, grief. I listened to their darkness. I guided them toward light. I gave them tools and frameworks and hope. And the entire time, I was drowning. You think therapists have it figured out. You think we're somehow immune to the darkness we treat. You think because we can name it and diagnose it and create treatment plans for it, that we don't fall into it ourselves. You're wrong. We fall. We fall hard. And the worst part? We're trained to hide it so well that nobody, not our colleagues, not our families, not even ourselves sometimes, can see it happening. My name is Dr. Ellen Rothman. I'm 71 years old. I've been a licensed therapist for 47 years, and I spent 4 decades of that teaching people how to save themselves while I was quietly, professionally, expertly dying inside. This is what therapists actually do when we're depressed, and I promise you, it's nothing like what we tell you to do. It started so gradually I didn't notice. That's the thing about depression when you're the expert on depression. You recognize the symptoms in everyone except yourself. You're too busy looking outward to see what's happening inward. I was 31 years old, 3 years into my practice. I had 17 clients. I was building something, gaining a reputation as someone who could handle the hard cases, the resistant clients, the ones other therapists gave up on. I was good at my job, really good, and I told myself that being good at helping others meant I was okay myself. The first sign was the Sundays. Every Sunday evening, starting around 4 p.m., I would feel this weight settle onto my chest, this specific crushing dread about the week ahead. 17 people's pain waiting for me. 17 stories of suffering I'd have to hold. 17 hours of being strong and present and wise when I felt none of those things. I told myself it was normal. Everyone hates Sunday evenings, right? Everyone gets the Sunday scaries. It wasn't depression. It was just the natural response to a demanding job. That's what I told myself for 8 years. The second sign was the bathroom. Between sessions, I would lock myself in the small bathroom in my office, and I would just stand there, staring at myself in the mirror. Sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes 15. I'd look at my face, and I wouldn't recognize the person looking back. She looked tired. She looked empty. She looked like she was performing being alive. And then I'd wash my hands, fix my hair, put on my therapist's face, and walk back out to the waiting room to greet the next client with warmth and presence and unconditional positive regard. The third sign was the thoughts. Not suicidal thoughts, not exactly. Just this persistent, intrusive thought. What's the point? Every morning waking up to my alarm. What's the point? Making coffee. What's the point? Driving to the office. What's the point? Sitting across from another person in pain. What's the point of any of this? I was treating people for depression while experiencing every single symptom myself, and I didn't tell anyone, not one person, not my supervisor, not my colleagues, not my husband Richard, nobody. Because here's what you don't understand about being a therapist with depression. We can't have depression, not publicly, not professionally. We're supposed to be the healthy ones. We're supposed to have done our own work. We're supposed to have our shit together so we can help you get yours together. If I admitted I was depressed, what would that say about my competence, my credibility? Why would anyone trust me to help them if I couldn't even help myself? So I hid it, and I got very, very good at hiding it. Here's what therapists actually do when we're depressed. And I'm going to be more honest than any therapist has ever been with you. We compartmentalize like our lives depend on it. Because professionally they do. I had 2 selves, Office Ellen and Home Ellen. Office Ellen was competent, compassionate, fully present. She had energy and insight and hope for her clients even when she had none for herself. Home Ellen was exhausted, irritable, numb. She sat on the couch staring at nothing. She couldn't remember the last time she felt joy. The split was so complete that sometimes I'd be driving home from work and I'd feel my entire face change. The therapist mask would slide off, the smile would disappear, the warmth would drain out. And I'd arrive home to Richard and he'd ask how my day was, and I'd say fine in a voice that was clearly not fine. And he'd look confused because Office Ellen had been fine all day helping 17 people. How could she suddenly not be fine? We use our clinical knowledge against ourselves. I knew all the cognitive distortions. I could identify them in my clients instantly. But when it came to my own thoughts, I'd catch myself thinking I'm worthless, I'm a fraud, nobody actually gets better because of me, I'm just taking people's money and giving them false hope. And instead of recognizing these as depression talking, I'd think, but what if it's true? What if I'm not depressed? I'm just finally seeing reality clearly. Depression lies. I told my clients that every single day. But when depression lied to me, I believed it. Because I'm the expert, surely I'd know if I was being lied to. We self-medicate, but we're sophisticated about it. I didn't turn to alcohol or drugs. Too obvious, too unprofessional. Instead, I worked, I added more clients, I took on more hours, I said yes to every consultation, every supervision request, every professional obligation. Because work was the one place I still felt competent, the one place the depression couldn't touch me. Except it could. It was touching everything. I just couldn't see it. I was 38 years old, seeing 23 clients a week, when one of them, a woman named Sarah, asked me a question that broke something open. She was depressed, severely. We'd been working together for 4 months. And one day, right in the middle of a session, she stopped talking and looked at me and said, "Dr. Rothman, when was the last time you felt joy?" I blinked. "We're here to talk about you, Sarah." "I know," she said, "but I'm asking anyway. When was the last time you felt actual joy?" I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out because I couldn't remember. I genuinely could not remember the last time I'd felt joy. "You look like I feel," Sarah said quietly, "and it scares me, because if you can't find your way out, how am I supposed to?" That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building and I asked myself the first question, the one I'd been avoiding for 7 years. What am I actually feeling? Not what I'm supposed to feel, not what a healthy therapist should feel, not what I tell my clients they should feel. What am I, Ellen, actually feeling right now? And the answer came up like something I'd been holding underwater, violent and gasping. Nothing. I feel nothing. I haven't felt anything real in years. I drove home. Richard was making dinner. He asked about my day. I said something non-committal. We ate in near silence. We'd been married 12 years and we barely spoke anymore. Not fighting, just absent. Both of us going through motions. After dinner, I went to our bedroom and I opened my journal. I'd kept journals my whole life, religiously, pages and pages about my clients' progress and professional development and clinical insights. When had I last written about myself? I flipped back. Months. It had been months since I'd written a single word about my own interior life. I started writing, not as Dr. Rothman, therapist and expert, as Ellen, just Ellen. And what came out was terrifying. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to hold other people's pain. I don't want to be the strong one. I don't want to have answers. I don't want to be wise. I'm so tired of being the person people depend on. I'm so tired of pretending I'm okay. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay in years, and I don't know who I am anymore outside of this role. The second question came right behind the first, inevitable and devastating. Who was I before I became everyone's healer? I became a therapist because of my mother. She was depressed my entire childhood. Undiagnosed, untreated, suffering in silence the way women of her generation did. I grew up reading her moods, managing her emotions, trying to make her okay. I was 8 years old and I was already playing therapist. By the time I was a teenager, I was good at it. I was the friend everyone came to with their problems. I was mature for my age. I was a good listener. I gave good advice. Teachers loved me. Other parents wished their kids were more like me. And I learned something very young. Being the helper meant being valuable. Being the strong one meant being loved. My worth was directly tied to how much I could hold for other people. I went to college and majored in psychology, and it felt inevitable. Of course, I'd be a therapist. It was what I was made for. It was my purpose. But here's what I never asked. What did I want? Not what was I good at. Not what did people need from me. What did I actually want? I tried to remember who Ellen was before she became Dr. Rothman, before she became the holder of pain, before she became the person everyone leaned on. At 8, I loved music. I played piano. Not particularly well, but with passion. I'd sit at the piano for hours, just playing, making up melodies, lost in sound. When did I stop playing? College. No time. Had to study. Had to prepare for graduate school. Had to be serious. At 15, I loved hiking. Being alone in nature. The silence of it. The way you could just be without performing for anyone. I'd go on long walks through the woods near our house and feel something like peace. When did I stop? Graduate school. No time. Had to focus. Had to build a practice. Had to be responsible. At 19, I'd wanted to study music therapy, not clinical psychology. I'd been fascinated by the intersection of sound and healing. My advisor said it was too niche, not enough job prospects. Clinical psychology was more practical, more respected. I switched my focus. I never questioned it. Somewhere in the journey from Ellen to Dr. Rothman, I'd stopped asking what I wanted and started asking what I should do. And should had led me here, 40 years old, successful, respected, completely empty inside. I did something I'd never done before. I called my own supervisor and said I needed to take a leave of absence, 2 months, for personal reasons. She was shocked. "Ellen, you've never taken time off. Are you okay?" "No," I said, and saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'm not okay. I'm depressed. I've been depressed for years, and I need to stop treating other people long enough to treat myself." The silence on the line was long. Then she said, "Thank you for telling me. That took courage." Courage. It felt like failure. I referred out all 23 clients, told them I was taking a sabbatical for health reasons. Some of them cried. Some of them asked if they'd done something wrong. Sarah, the one who'd asked me about Joy, just nodded and said, "Good, I'm glad you're finally taking care of yourself." The third question came during my first week off. I was sitting in my own therapist's office. Yes, therapists have therapists. We're supposed to. I'd been seeing Dr. Chen for supervision purposes, for professional development. I'd never once used the time to talk about myself. "Ellen," Dr. Chen said, "what are you willing to sacrifice to live as your true self?" I stared at her. "You've built an entire identity around being the helper," she continued. "Your marriage, your friendships, your professional reputation, all of it is structured around you being the strong one. If you stop performing that role, what happens? What are you willing to lose?" And I realized everything. The answer might be everything. Richard and I separated 4 months into my leave. Not because of anger or infidelity or any dramatic reason, just because when I stopped being Dr. Rothman, the competent caretaker, the strong one, he didn't know who I was. And I didn't know who he was without someone to worry about. We'd built a marriage around roles. He was the one who needed support. I was the one who provided it. When I stopped providing it, stopped being endlessly available and patient and understanding, the whole structure collapsed. "You're different," he said. "I'm tired," I said. "I'm 40 years old and I've been taking care of people since I was 8 and I'm tired." "So that's it? You're just going to give up?" "I'm not giving up," I said. "I'm finally showing up for myself." He moved out 3 weeks later. Some of my colleagues stopped referring clients to me. Word got around that I'd taken a leave for mental health reasons, and apparently that made me less trustworthy, less competent. A therapist with depression, how could she possibly help anyone? The irony was devastating. The thing that made me human made me professionally suspect. But here's what I gained: myself. I bought a piano, a real one, not a keyboard. I put it in my living room and I started playing again. Badly at first, my fingers didn't remember, but slowly, over weeks and months, the music came back, and with it, something like joy. I started hiking, long solo hikes through state parks, hours of silence and trees and just being. No clients to think about, no one else's pain to hold, just me and the woods and the slow, difficult work of remembering who I was. I started writing, not clinical notes, not case studies, poetry. Terrible amateur poetry about depression and loss and the specific loneliness of being the person everyone depends on. I showed it to no one. It was mine. At 43, I went back to work, but differently. 12 clients instead of 23, clear boundaries, no evening sessions, no working through lunch. I said no to consultations I didn't have energy for. I said no to supervision requests that felt like burdens instead of joy. And I was honest. When clients asked how I was, I didn't always say fine. Sometimes I said, I'm struggling this week. Sometimes I said, that's a hard question. Sometimes I admitted that I didn't have all the answers. And you know what happened? They trusted me more, not less, more, because they could see I was human, and humans struggle. And if I could struggle and still show up and still do the work and still find meaning, maybe they could too. I'm 71 now. I've been in practice for 47 years. For the last 28 of those years, I've been honest about my depression, not with every client, not inappropriately, but when it's relevant, when it serves the work, I tell the truth. I have depression. I manage it. Some days are harder than others, and I'm still here. I'm writing this because you need to know something. Your therapist is human. Shocking, I know, but we are. We struggle. We doubt. We have bad days and dark thoughts and moments when we don't have the answers. And when we're depressed, we do exactly what you do. We minimize it, we hide it, we push through it. We tell ourselves it's not that bad. We perform wellness while dying inside. The difference is we're supposed to know better, and that makes it worse because depression doesn't care how much you know. It doesn't care that you have 3 degrees and decades of experience and a wall full of certifications. It comes anyway. But here's what I learned. The depression isn't the problem. The hiding is the problem. The performance is the problem. The belief that we have to be perfectly healed before we can help others heal, that's the problem. You know what makes a good therapist? Not someone who's never been depressed, someone who's been depressed and learned to live with it. Someone who knows the darkness from the inside and found their way through, not out, through, because you don't get out. You just get better at moving through. So here's what I wish someone had told me at 31 when the Sunday dread started. What are you actually feeling? Stop performing competence long enough to answer honestly. Who were you before you became everyone's healer? That person is still in there. What did they love? What made them feel alive? What are you willing to sacrifice to live as your true self? Because the alternative is sacrificing yourself to live as everyone else's version of you. I spent 40 years in the second sacrifice. The last 28 years I chose the first, and the first is harder, but it's real, and real is better than performed, every time.